I guess in this film's case, you can either die a villain or live long enough to see yourself become porked by your own franchise, because oh, how far we have fallen. I've been sitting on this movie for at least 3 to 4 weeks now, and the rage has just been building up between natural disasters happening in my state and traveling. So if you're not into rage rants or rant reviews, I'll see you next week. For the rest of us, it's gonna be a long video. Greetings and salutations. Today we're going to be talking about Joker 2, which is the sequel to the original Joker from 2019, still directed by Todd Phillips and still starring Joaquin Phoenix, but alongside them, Lady Gaga is kind of doing her thing. At the start of this film, where we're currently at with Arthur, he's locked up at Arkham Asylum, dumping pee buckets with his Arkham chummies and awaiting trial that has created a lot of buzz for him, and he's now sort of an infamous celebrity within the lockup, which is entirely what this plot revolves around. During this courtroom drama, it's dark, it's gritty, it's controversial. It's the Joker. It just feels like the madness of 2 was less about the Joker and Harley dynamic than what they showed in the trailers, and more about Arthur literally fighting himself and losing, which could have been fine. You know, you're subverting expectations, that's great, except we forgot everything that made the first film compelling and decided to revisit all those themes again, which seems redundant when we've already committed to the fact this man is the Joker. But instead of building on that foundation, they decided to completely bulldoze it, add a couple new pieces in, and expect us to be equally as happy as we were the first time. And now, spoilers ahead, in the words of the Joker, you get what you freaking deserve. So if you don't want to hear spoilers, do what you will. One thing you can't discount this film for is the cinematography. I mean, that's one of the only things you can rely on. At least it looks pretty. Matched with the acting and the score, these are far from the things you're going to walk away and complain about. If anything, this is probably the only reason you would probably go and see it in theaters, which they still use a lot of the scores and music from the original film, and it still hits incredibly well. It also seems like they've added some depth to some of the musical nodes, and to me, it makes the scenes feel a lot heavier when you have those violins just it didn't sound like that, but that's my violin. That's as close as we're gonna get. To an extent, I felt like I was watching Peaky Blinders with a smoking diet in this film. This, my friend, was not a film. This was a smoking ad. I mean, I left the theater feeling like I needed a cigarette, and I don't even smoke. So, if the movie accomplished anything, it's that. Now, outside of the basic requirements for this film, the pacing is everywhere. Honestly, it seemed like Todd Phillips couldn't decide on 3 different plot ideas based off of this movie. There was the unmasking Arthur, the triumph of the Joker, and even the Harley Quinn Joker dynamic that was squeezed in there. You spend so much time waiting and hoping for something meaningful to happen, and it never does, because they teased so many great scenes that were in the trailers. Like, they're good at marketing, they're doing their job, but at the same time, half of those scenes aren't even in the movie. Very early on in the film, you can tell that they threw away any sense of momentum and storytelling. And because Joaquin Phoenix doesn't want to take part in doing a trilogy, they killed him off and squeezed in just a little cheap shot, just a little in the background, another Joker, which is supposed to be hinted at Heath Ledger. I don't know if their idea behind that was to backpedal on the fact that we just killed off the main character of this film. We just have this random guy with a staring problem, you know, just running around, clowning around in Gotham, or is it New York? Because I don't know which one they're choosing at this point. Assuming all of you have already seen this movie at this point or seen different takes on it without watching the movie, what did you think about hearing that or seeing that for the first time? Because I didn't think that was gonna happen. I mean, no one did, but why? Aside from this, the musical transitions don't even align with the story majority of the time. They are not well executed. They don't even belong. At times, the music is even louder than the lyrics themselves. And what they did to Lady Gaga and having her sing, Arthur is a better singer than the actual singer herself. And most of the time, it's a painful sequence to sit through whenever you see her on screen. There's one sequence that happens early on between Arthur and Lee, and they're running from Arkham Asylum, escaping to the front gates where the reporters and the press are, because they just set the whole place on fire. While that's happening, there's this whole disorganized mess of noise in this entire sequence. I know this is reality and they're trying to use this to elevate the madness, but at every single turn, they are failing. I can grant this movie 2 good musical sequences. That is all you get out of the 8 that are playing throughout this entire film, because the rest of them are goofy. If I was doing the sound design, of course, I would have just overlaid the music. The worst parts is when these people are just singing raw.
Come on, get happy. Ready for the judgment.
There's no autotune. There's no sense of music, beat, rhythm. Just because they're mentally incapable of anything does not mean they're incapable of singing. That It's a musical. I think we'll all understand. And at that point, I would let the scene breathe. Let the characters interact with it, or make a whole freaking sequence that you litter throughout the trailers of these cardboard cutout sequences and have that happen while the song is going on. So I at least get an image of, oh, they're having a break. Like, this is a moment. Like, they're not here right now. On that premise of character, Harley Quinn is merely reduced to being an obstacle that Arthur constantly has to hurdle over. She's in fact not his partner in crime. If anything, she's the one thing that keeps Arthur's misery going on long term. Her motivations in this film is somewhat passable. You know, she still has the background in psychology, with her father also being a psychologist as well. And even the fact that she's a fanatic of the Joker persona. So she wanted to check herself into the asylum and meet the guy himself. When you do absolutely nothing with it, and then the character just kind of pops in, pops out whenever she wants, just to claim that she's with the Joker, it doesn't really do anything. She's not a character on her own. We see no development going from there. And by far, this is the weakest Harley iteration that I've ever seen. Now, this is where they get a little serious, and especially with Arthur's backstory, and I don't like how they handled it. It's mentioned that Arthur endured a lot of horrific abuse as a child, and his mother didn't really care all that much for him, but still would put in mental reinforcements in order for him to think the opposite. It just seemed like in that moment they were trying to give this character as much reason to turn into that Joker persona as possible, just for it to all be burned away within 20 minutes because he gets sexually assaulted by Arkham guards. And that to me was one of the biggest things that set me off after the rest of this movie, because from that moment you have to have a reason for it. You can't just insert it and then we're moving on to the next thing. It feels very much for shock value instead of adding anything meaningful to the character itself. It just makes you uncomfortable, and you're sitting there watching Arthur, and this doesn't develop his character any further. The plot doesn't advance because of it. If anything, he crumbles, as he should, as Joker and as Arthur himself. That moment going forward tore down everything that had been built up in the previous movie. Nothing was redeemable after that point. To kind of help paint the picture of how we didn't have to go this route, we could have literally had the sequence almost happen. And then Arthur ends up killing the guards, or he's able to get loose somehow, some way, grabs like a mirror shard, and he ends up stabbing them, carving out smiles, and he commits that this is his personality. This is what I'm gonna do. Takes over Arkham, and he starts leaning on the support of other people that are like him. By this point in the movie, I was already done. Things happen in this movie, things don't happen in this movie, and unlike its predecessor, there's no resolution, there's no growth. I'm sitting here mentally exhausted by the end of it, and I have no idea what this movie was trying to say. I couldn't tell you. In the first film, we understand why Arthur went from Arthur Fleck to the Joker. He is back at square one, and everything we built in the first film is gone. And now we have to figure out how this character is going to navigate this entire film when he's spiraling the entire time, and it leads to nothing. I know I've said this a lot, but we quite literally went in a circle. There is no charm, there is no humor, there is no twisted philosophy to make you think. Who are we supposed to root for? This first movie made you sympathize with the people's Joker, and now we're sitting here watching Arthur bleed out in the middle of a hallway with no purpose and no catharsis, except maybe to set up two new villains, which one of them is a slightly crispy Harvey Dent and the other one is another butchered Joker. And I think this movie failed because of studio interference. Joker was never supposed to have a sequel. It was a standalone piece that let everybody know, like, hey, pay attention to us. We can actually do this and put more work into our films and make it more interesting. Like, comic book films can have artistic value. But I think with the certain transitions of the DCEU and looking at the whole universe as a whole and figuring out which one was going to make us more money, I think Todd Phillips and the studio looked at Joker and was like, why not cash in? Which is now the movie that nobody wanted to make, but everyone wanted to cash in. So there you have it. This movie is a get the hell out of the kitchen for me, because there is no amount of seasoning that's going to save this movie. You just can't cook. Don't cook. But if you somehow made it through Joker 2 without losing your mind, be sure to leave it in the comments down below whether you love it or you hate it. And also comment down below your theories and inquiries, and I'll respond to them as soon as possible. Don't forget to like if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe if you want to see more of my gremlin content if you're new. And hit that notification bell while you're down there so that way you stay notified on when I upload. Check out the links down below for portals to new endeavors, because fun stuff happens there sometimes. But anyway, I hope you guys have a lovely day, and I'll see you guys on the flip side.